From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Carla Gonzalez. We begin in the Dominican Republic, where Venezuela's opposition refrained from signing the agreement reached with the government on this latest round of talks. The meetings went late into the night on Tuesday. Jorge Rodriguez, head of the government delegation, said that the document details all the points already requested by the opposition, as well as 2 extra points on the territorial dispute with Guyana and election procedures. He regretted that a phone call from Colombia to the opposition prevented them from signing. The Dominican President Danilo Medina called on both delegations to hold further talks in the coming hours.
The other point we've asked them to include deals with electoral guarantees. Those electoral guarantees include the date of elections, on which we are already in agreement. They also include the register of voters, all kinds of audits, a full observer mission, etc., etc. And we asked them to include a line that would say, independently of whatever the results may be, the parties promise to recognize the results of the 2018 presidential election.
Our correspondent Madeleine Garcia has the details from Santo Domingo.
The dialogue in the Dominican Republic came to an end without the opposition signing the agreement that included all the points agreed during this latest round of talks. Jorge Rodriguez, the head of the government delegation, said the opposition delegates had received a call from Bogotá, Colombia, which prevented them signing the document after President Juan Manuel Santos met the United States Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. Rodriguez also said that his government did sign the document, which will be handed over to the international observers. 2 new items were added to those already agreed. The first one talks about the defense of the Guyana territory that Venezuela claims as its own, and the second one about recognition of the results in the coming elections, whatever they may be. Both delegations are to meet again this Wednesday at 10 in the morning, hoping that a final agreement will be signed by both parts. We will be here informing you as everything unfolds.
Madeleine Garcia from Santo Domingo. U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson met with Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos on Tuesday to discuss, among other issues, the situation in Venezuela. Tillerson said the U.S. is heartbroken by the economic and social situation affecting the country and appreciates Colombia's effort in dealing with the crisis. Both governments aim at restoring, as they put it, democracy in Venezuela, with Santos saying that the new elections have no validity.
Along
with the grave humanitarian situation that the dictatorial regime in Venezuela refuses to recognize, they are now adding a call for presidential elections. Elections that will have no validity for us because they offer no assurances. None. And they aren't going to offer any. Maduro will never accept holding free and transparent elections because he knows he would lose.
During the meeting, Tillerson and Santos also discussed the war on drugs and Colombia's effort to combat a recent increase in coca cultivation.
We did discuss our concerns about the surge in coca cultivation and cocaine production in Colombia. But the President also gave me a very good report of the steps that are being taken, the progress that's being made, and he just spoke to much of that, and we are quite encouraged by what we hear. And we will continue to work with Colombia to support these efforts where we can be of assistance as well. This is a shared challenge for both of our nations as well, to work together to undermine the transcriminal organizations that create the networks that are devastating for citizens in Colombia, and they're devastating to the American people as well.
And Tillerson is scheduled to arrive in Jamaica on Thursday. This visit has been criticized because the U.S. president has used harsh words to describe people from Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa. We spoke to Dr. Richard Bernal, a former Jamaican ambassador to the United States, about this visit and how it is viewed in Jamaica.
The social media has had a vigorous discussion, and that possibility is raised. Many people are calling on the government not to immediately accept everything that the United States is requesting of them. but to put an agenda which is in the interest of Jamaica and not merely subscribe to the wishes of the U.S.
The Inter-American Commission of Human Rights has criticized one of the questions in Ecuador's recent referendum, which would replace the country's Citizen Participation Council. It has filed a provisional measure to keep the members of the council in place. The human rights organization said their removal could put at risk the country's rule of law and the separation of powers. The council delegates were chosen until 2020, and according to the Inter-American Commission, they can only be removed if the country's National Assembly approves a political trial. The Ecuadorian government says it will continue to protect WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange after he lost one legal bid to have an arrest warrant against him dropped. After the UK court ruled against him, Assange launched a legal bid to have the British authorities halt any action against him on public interest grounds. Judge Emma Arbuthnot will give her decision next Tuesday. In the meantime, Julian Assange's lawyer, Jennifer Robinson, said the risk of extradition to the US remains very real.
We are not afraid of anything, of nothing other than those that escape the respect of freedom, respect for dignity. That is the only thing we can fear. Mr. Assange is an inherited problem. He's a problem that is not comfortable. Under no circumstances, no country will be comfortable in a similar circumstance. However, we made a commitment from the start to continue protecting the life of Mr. Assange, which we think is in danger. The decisions that the London court made, without a doubt, affect, but are not determinants in our decision. We will continue to provide protection to Mr. Assange in accordance with the laws of international refuge.
3 people have died in floods and fires in north and central Argentina. Some 800,000 hectares were burned in the province of La Pampa and more than 100,000 others in the province of Mendoza. More than 17,000 people have been affected by floods and thousands have been evacuated from the province of Salta. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. A partial power outage hit parts of Venezuela, including the capital Caracas, on Tuesday. The blackout affected traffic signals, phone lines, and train stations during the rush hour. Venezuela's energy ministry said it was caused by saboteurs who cut a cable and caused an explosion. Critics of the government said the blackout reflected the critical state of Venezuela's economy. communities and environmental organizations in El Salvador are fighting to protect the mangrove forest and its biodiversity. We have more in this report.
El Salvador has 8 protected areas around the country. The Jiquilisco Bay and Barra de Santiago are just 2 of them. Mangrove forests are in danger because of the unregulated use of river water and bad farming practices.
This ecosystem is threatened by the sugarcane cultivation. Farmers take the water from the rivers and are damaging the water basins just so they can keep their crops. They also burn crops.
The wetlands of the mangrove forest have to feed from fresh and salt water, a balance that is hard to achieve now because of the lack of water sources that go to the forest. People from Garita Palmera make their living from fishing from the mangrove, now contaminated by chemicals used for the cane sugar production. Environmental reports reveal that wetlands have reduced by over 50%, especially mangroves. This affects around 20,000 people living in 18 different communities from Barra de Santiago. They fear for their food safety.
We need the mix of fresh and salt water. This mix means the mangrove can live along with the fish. 80% of the population in the region lives off fishing activities.
Environmental activists with the communities and the Ministry of Environment are pushing for the rivers to be cleaned and the reforestation of critical areas that could help maintain the ecosystems.
If the mangrove disappears, so will several species. Many of them come here during the winter to nest, to survive. During the summer, they go upstream.
The damage to the wetlands is not only affecting the people of Garita Palmera. The reduction of the mangrove forest worldwide also influences the rise of temperatures, making the countries in the region more vulnerable.
An injunction blocking work on a highway extension through a forested area in East Trinidad has been lifted. The NGO Fishermen and Friends of the Sea had been granted a temporary injunction in early January because of the potential threat to the Aripo savanna. The Environmental Management Authority has designated the savanna an environmentally sensitive area, yet it issued a certificate of environmental clearance for the project authorizing the construction. The NGO says it will challenge the court's decision. Ex-U.S. President Bill Clinton is in Dominica to view the island's ongoing recovery efforts in the wake of last year's Hurricane Maria. The Clinton Foundation will be launching an action network on post-disaster recovery. The former U.S. president met with Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit and several members of his cabinet.
Today, our relationship with the Clinton Climate Initiative will grow deeper as we announce our plans to work together to develop a rapid integrated resource plan for Dominica's energy sector.
Appreciate the heroic efforts you are making to overcome the impacts of the natural disasters that have befallen you, but even more, to take advantage of this moment to position your country to handle the next disasters better.
Mayan communities in Guatemala celebrate the first anniversary of the departure of a Spanish company, Hydro Santa Cruz. We'll explain more right now.
The communities from Barillas municipality, Huehuetenango, celebrate the definitive cancellation of the hydroelectric project Cambalam. A victory comes after a social struggle which started back in 2012.
We are celebrating a historic moment, crucial for us because the death of this company, Hydro Santa Cruz, gives us hope to keep living.
For 4 years, the Spanish company, subsidiary of Hidralia Ecoener, tried to build a hydroelectric plant despite the community's resistance. On December 22 of 2016, Hydro Santa Cruz said they were giving away the rights that the state gave them for the Cambalam project. Although the company left the city, the inhabitants say that they are still suffering from the wounds they left behind.
There are arrest warrants pending. There is also a criminal proceeding that is pending. In the year 2012, Andrés Pedro, an activist, was murdered.
The town of Barillas Huehuetenango was a landmark, according to social activists, because it strongly defended its natural surroundings.
We want to tell the state that as long as the indigenous people are organized, as long as the indigenous people exist, we are going to defend life. we're going to defend the natural assets.
The Mayan communities, Cuajan Jobales, are now demanding the township to build its own power plant for its people.
We don't want companies hurting us, but that doesn't mean we don't want development. We don't want the fake development that they are offering us. We want it to develop here.
Hydro Santa Cruz was the only license granted by the Ministry of Energy and Mines in the town of Barillas, Huehuetenango. With its dismissal, there aren't any more hydroelectrical projects.
In Mexico City, Movimiento Ciudadano has held a peaceful demonstration to commemorate the origin of the Mexican Constitution.
Members from the citizens' new popular constituent took over the courtyard outside the Palacio de Bellas Artes to honor the 101st anniversary of the 1917 Mexican Constitution, a document they feel has not been respected for a long time.
The Constitution has been defiled, but its principles remain. Those principles are meant for the people who demanded liberty, equality, and sovereignty. We're determined to keep those principles.
This movement wants a new legal framework, one that comes from ordinary people.
Our project prioritizes the people. We believe that through dialogue, through committees, through building agreements, we can create a new constitution.
They question the structural reforms brought in by Enrique Peña Nieto's government, which they believe are against the original constitutional values, such as the controversial security law approved at the end of 2017.
The national security law tramples over people's rights and seeks to prevent us from protesting.
Despite backing some candidates to further their goal, they're aware that it will be difficult to advance their movement in this election year.
We recognize the National Indigenous Congress in particular as a people-made initiative. Therefore, we respect them, but we have declared we are not considering any electoral alternative.
The 1917 Constitution originated from the Mexican Revolution, which defended the right to work, to unionize, to public health and education. According to citizens, these rights have been infringed during the Enrique Peña Nieto's administration.
The Mexican film director Guillermo del Toro has been named Best Director of 2017 for his film The Shape of Water. This award for Best Feature comes from the Directors Guild of America. Del Toro's film is one of the favorites to win at the Academy Awards next month, including Best Director, Best Film, and Best Original Screenplay prizes. We'll take one last short break. We'll be back after a look at what our multimedia team is reporting.
Options for Venezuela. And by the way, I'm not going to rule out a military option. We have many options for Venezuela. This is our neighbor. This is, we're all over the world, and we have troops all over the world in places that are very, very far away. Venezuela is not very far away.
Welcome back. The Greek right-wing extremism took the streets where tens of thousands of nationalists protested in Athens against the negotiations between the Greek government and the former Yugoslavian Republic of Macedonia. We have more details in the next report.
The motto, Macedonia is Greece, has the objective to stop the Greek government to accept that the neighboring state has the term Macedonia or any variation in its name.
We are Greeks, we are Macedonians, we are the ones defending the name no matter the consequences.
Macedonia is the central region of Greece, but the inhabitants of the former Yugoslavian Republic of Macedonia also call themselves Macedonians. The Greeks call their neighbors Skopje after their capital.
We repeat it, Skopje parties cannot take part of our country because it doesn't belong to them.
The diplomatic conflict began in 1991 with the Declaration of Independence. It's the first time since then that the two governments are willing to solve it, but the nationalists from both sides don't want to cave.
Unfortunately, Tsipras is such a liar that I don't think anything will change, but the Greeks must remain united in these tough times.
According to the organizers, this is the largest nationalist demonstration in the history of Greece. The demonstration is similar to the ones in 2015. Syntagma Plaza and the nearby streets are completely full. In the central area, next to the parliament, there are neo-Nazis of Golden Dawn and the other organizers. Right-wing extremism is behind this demonstration, although others participated, like the former Prime Minister Antonis Samaras and deputies for the New Democracy, ANEL, government partners, and the musician Mikis Theodorakis, who was at one time symbol of Greek communism.
As you can see, outside the parliament there are thousands of Greeks that are protesting. The Golden Dawn Party will demand that the name is not given away.
The anti-fascist movement was afraid that at the end of the demonstrations there would be attacks against refugees or social centers, like it happened 2 weeks ago in Thessaloniki. Thanks to the organization of the anti-fascists, the attempts of the fascists were contained, and there were not any serious incidents.
And moving ahead, let's take a look at some other news from around the world.
Strong aftershocks continue to rock Taiwan after 6.4 magnitude earthquake hit the island on Tuesday. At least 4 people have been killed and more than 200 injured. Many buildings have been damaged in the city of Hualien, and the rescue workers continue to look for missing people. French President Emmanuel Macron has visited Corsica amid growing demand for autonomy for the region by the nationalists. For decades, the separatists have been calling for secession from mainland France. Pressure has grown on the French government after the nationalists won the recent regional elections. Ahead of Macron's visit, thousands of nationalist supporters marched to ask for greater freedom.
We want Corsica to be able to manage itself like New Caledonia or Guadeloupe. I don't know. There are other islands. Recognition of our side. We are on the other side of the Mediterranean. Obviously, we are different. We are waiting for this recognition.
U.S. Vice President Mike Pence has said that Washington will announce tougher sanctions on North Korea to dissuade it from its nuclear program. Pence made a stop in Tokyo before attending the opening ceremony of the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics in South Korea. There are high speculations that the U.S. and North Korea officials will meet at the Games to hold a joint talk.
We will not allow North Korean propaganda to hijack the message and imagery of the Olympic Games. We will not allow North Korea to hide behind the Olympic banner the reality that they enslave their people and threaten the wider region.
Global markets have rebounded after a volatile swing earlier this week when the Dow suffered its largest one-day drop in history that pulled down markets across Asia and Europe. Although the growth still remains unstable, the U.S. stocks surged, helping to regain half of their losses from the wild market plunge.
A report by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has identified 206 companies involved in business ties with illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Our correspondent Nur Harasin has more.
A report published last week by the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, OHCHR, identified 206 international campaigns involved in business ties with illegal Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem. Although the report deferred naming any of the companies, it noticed that the 206 firms under review, 143 are based in Israel, 22 in the US, and 41 in Europe.
The international human rights law considers the establishment of Israeli settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories a war crime. Those who participate in this action are partners in the crime. The United Nations Human Rights High Commissioner was assigned to produce a report, including all the companies which support settlements to be targeted for sanctions and boycott, until they commit to the obligations of international human rights law and stop being partners in crimes committed against the Palestinian people.
Israel fears that the companies listed on any UN blacklist would be targeted for international boycott and divestment. Israeli envoy to the UN, Danny Danon, denounced the report as a shameful act that would serve as a stain on the UN Human Rights Council forever. The report observed that businesses play a central role in furthering the establishment and expansion of Israeli settlements. New Israeli statistics have shown recently that over 400,000 Israeli settlers live in 150 illegal Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank alone, excluding East Jerusalem, in clear violation of international law. Noor Harazin, Telesu TV, Palestine.
And with this, we've come to the end of this morning news brief. This and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.